The air is thick with the ghosts of walls. It tastes like chalk and sawdust, a fine powder that coats my tongue and settles in my lungs. This is my house. Or it was. Right now, it's a skeleton, a ribcage of exposed 2x4s and dangling wires that hiss with dormant electricity. Mark stands in the center of what used to be our living room, his arms crossed, his silhouette dark against the plastic-sheeted windows. He looks like a stranger pretending to be my husband. "It's just for a few weeks, Sarah," he says. His voice, usually so warm, has the flat, hard echo of a voice in an empty room. "The dust is getting insane. It's not healthy for you. And honestly, the crew can move faster if they don't have to worry about working around you." He says you like I'm a piece of furniture that needs to be put in storage. An inconvenience. I run a hand along a raw beam, the wood rough against my palm. "We bought this house 5 years ago. A beautiful, crumbling Victorian with good bones and a soul that felt like ours. We spent years saving, years dreaming. We'd sketch floor plans on napkins in diners, whispering about bay windows and a kitchen big enough to dance in. Now the dream is being gutted, and he wants to gut me from it, too. I don't mind a dust," I say, my voice small. "I want to be here. I want to see the progress." "You'll see it when it's done," he says, a note of finality in his tone that freezes the air between us. "It'll be a surprise. A grand reveal. Our new life." All at once he smiles, but it doesn't reach his eyes. His eyes are looking past me, through me, at a future I'm suddenly not sure I'm in. He steps forward, puts his hands on my shoulders. His touch feels cold, even through my jacket. "Go stay at that little corporate apartment downtown. It'll be like a vacation. A break from all this, a break from him." He doesn't say it, but I hear it. The words hang in the dusty air, shimmering like disturbed motes of light. He's kicking me out of my own home, out of my own life, and he's packaging it as a gift. If you've ever felt invisible in your own life, tell me in the comments. I read all of them. And please, if you haven't already, subscribe. It helps more than you know. Our beginning wasn't a whirlwind. It was a slow burn, the best kind. We met in a coffee shop that smelled of burnt beans and old books. He was struggling with a laptop that refused to connect to the Wi-Fi, and I, having spent half my life troubleshooting for my technologically challenged father, leaned over and fixed it in under a minute. He looked at me with this expression of pure, unadulterated awe, like I'd just performed a miracle. He bought me a coffee to say thank you, and we ended up talking until the barista started stacking chairs on the tables. He was a project manager for a construction firm, ambitious and charming, with a laugh that made you want to laugh with him. I was running the back end of my father's high-end renovation company, a business he'd built from the ground up with his own 2 hands. I handled the books, the client relations, the design consultations, the heart and soul of the operation. My dad was the craftsman, the artist. I was the architect of his success. Mark was fascinated by it. He loved the history, the legacy. He loved that I wasn't just some girl. I was building something. Or so I thought. When my father passed away 2 years into our marriage, the company became mine. The weight of it was immense, a legacy I was terrified to tarnish. Mark stepped up. He suggested he leave his job and come work with me for me. "Let me handle the front lines," he'd said, holding my hands across our small kitchen table. "You're grieving. Let me be your shield. I'll manage the crews, deal with the clients on site. You can keep doing what you do best from the office, from home. We'll be a team." It felt like a lifeline. I was drowning in grief, and he was offering me a raft. So I agreed. He became the face of Miller and Daughter Renovations, even though there was no Miller anymore, just the daughter. He was good at it. His charm won over clients. His ambition pushed our profits higher than ever. I stayed in the background, the silent partner in my own company, the quiet engine running the whole machine. I didn't mind. I loved him. I trusted him. His success felt like our success. The house was the pinnacle of that success. It was a premarital asset, something I'd bought with the inheritance my father had left me personally, separate from the business. It was my name on the deed and my name alone. A detail Mark had called a formality when we signed the papers. "It's our house, Sarah," he'd said, kissing the top of my head. A piece of paper doesn't change that, I believed him. The house was our shared dream, the ultimate renovation project. It was a testament to everything we were building together. For years, we planned. We'd walk through the dusty, empty rooms, my hand in his, imagining our future. "This is where the kids will do their homework," he'd say, gesturing to a sun-drenched nook in the kitchen. "And this will be our room. Our sanctuary." He'd pull me close, his voice a low whisper against my ear, and I'd feel a profound sense of peace. This was it. This was the life I had always wanted, built with the man I loved, inside the walls that held our future. We saved for the renovation itself for 3 years, even with the company doing well. We wanted to do it right, with no expense spared. The finest materials, the best craftsmen, our own crew, of course. It was going to be our masterpiece, a showpiece for the company and the foundation of our family. The day we finally started, the day the first sledgehammer hit the first wall, felt like a celebration. We stood on the lawn, arms around each other, watching our dream begin to take shape. I had never been happier. I had never felt more secure. The noise of the demolition was the sound of our future being born. I didn't realize it was actually the sound of my life being torn apart. The suggestion that I move out came a month into the project. It was framed, as all his best manipulations were, as an act of profound concern. We were sitting on the porch swing of the half-demolished house, drinking lukewarm coffee from a thermos. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of cut pine and wet earth. "I was talking to the foreman today," he began, his voice casual. He nudged the swing with his foot, a gentle, rhythmic motion. "He's worried about the amount of plaster dust. The old stuff. Said it could have asbestos. Probably not, but you can never be too careful." I looked at him. "The crew is wearing masks. I can wear one too." He shook his head, a paternalistic little smile on his face. "It's not the same, honey. They're in and out. You're here. You're trying to work from the dining room table while there's a jackhammer going off in the next room. It's not good for your stress levels. It's not good for your lungs." He took my hand. His felt warm and strong. "I have an idea. The company keeps that corporate apartment downtown for visiting clients. It's sitting empty for the next 2 months. Why don't you stay there? It's clean, it's quiet. You can set up a proper workspace. I'll still be here, overseeing everything. I'll send you pictures every single day. And when it's all done, I'll bring you home. To our perfect, finished house." Every part of me screamed no. Leaving felt like a surrender. This was my project as much as his. My design choices, my architectural plans, my father's crew, my house. But the way he looked at me, with such apparent love and worry in his eyes, disarmed me. He was framing it as him taking on the burden for my sake. How could I argue with that without sounding selfish or ungrateful? "I don't know, Mark." I hesitated. "It feels weird, being separated." "It's not being separated," he corrected gently. "It's a strategic move to get the job done faster and keep you safe. Think of it. No waking up to hammering at 7 a.m., no sharing a bathroom with a dozen dusty construction workers. Room service," he grinned, that easy, charming grin that had always been my undoing. "It'll be like a little adventure." He sold it so well. He painted a picture of me, relaxed and pampered in a sleek, modern apartment, while he toiled away in the dirt and grime for us. He was the hero of the story, slaying the dragon of renovation, so he could present the castle to his princess. And I, the foolish princess, believed him. I let my own intuition be silenced by his pretty words. "Okay," I said, the word feeling like a betrayal of myself. "Okay, just for a little while." His relief was palpable. He hugged me tightly, burying his face in my hair. "Thank you," he whispered. "You won't regret this. It's the right thing to do." Packing felt surreal. I was only taking a suitcase, as if for a short trip. A few changes of clothes, my laptop, a book. I walked through the skeletal remains of our home, touching the raw wood of the new framing, the cold glass of the newly installed windows. It already felt less like mine. I was a visitor. I paused in the doorway of our bedroom, where a gaping hole looked out onto the backyard. This was the room where we were supposed to build our sanctuary. Now it was just a shell, open and vulnerable. A cold breeze blew through, and I shivered. Mark carried my suitcase to the car. He was cheerful, bustling with an energy that felt jarring. He was too happy to see me go. He kissed me goodbye at the door of the apartment building, a quick, sterile peck on the cheek. "I'll call you tonight. I'll send you pictures of the new plumbing," he said, already backing away toward his truck. I watched him drive off until his taillights disappeared around the corner. Then I turned and faced the polished chrome and glass lobby of my temporary new life. The apartment was on the 15th floor. It was exactly as he'd described: clean, quiet, and completely devoid of personality. The furniture was generic, the art on the walls was abstract and meaningless. It smelled of air freshener and loneliness. I dropped my suitcase by the door and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. The city sprawled out below me, a glittering, indifferent feast. I could see for miles in every direction, but I had never felt more lost. I was an exile in my own story, and I had handed the author's pen to the one person I thought I could trust. The first week was a blur of hollow silence. The apartment was too quiet. I was used to the chaotic symphony of a home under construction, the distant shouts of the crew, the whine of a saw, the rhythmic thud of a hammer. Here, the only sound was the sterile hum of the air conditioning and the faint, distant wail of sirens. I tried to work, setting up my laptop on the small glass desk, but I couldn't focus. My mind was back at the house, wandering through its dusty, half-finished rooms. Mark, true to his word, sent pictures the first few days. A blurry shot of newly installed pipes. A photo of a smiling electrician holding up a coil of wire. The texts that came with them were short, almost perfunctory. "Plumbing's in. Electrical rough and done." They felt like corporate memos, not messages from my husband. I'd try to call, eager for details, for the sound of his voice. "Hey, how did it go today?" I'd ask, trying to inject some enthusiasm I didn't feel. "Good, good." "Busy," he'd reply, his voice distant, distracted. I could hear the sounds of a site in the background, but he sounded miles away. "Listen, Sarah, I'm right in the middle of something. Can I call you back later?" He never did. By the second week, the photo updates dwindled, then stopped completely. My calls went to voicemail more often than not. When I did manage to get him on the phone, his answers were clipped, his patience thin. "How's the kitchen looking? Did the cabinets I ordered arrive?" I asked one afternoon, clutching the phone like a lifeline. A heavy sigh on the other end. "Sarah, you have to trust me to handle this. We picked everything out together. It's all under control. You're supposed to be relaxing, remember?" "I'm not relaxing, Mark. I'm sitting in a silent apartment 100 feet above the ground, completely disconnected from our biggest life project. I want to be involved." "You are involved," he said, his tone sharp now. "You sign the checks. Now, let me do the job you're paying me to do." The word stung. He made it sound like a simple transaction, like I was just the client, and he was the contractor. The intimacy, the partnership, it was all gone. He was building a wall around the project, and I was on the outside. Desperate for a connection, for a glimpse of our dream, I decided to drive out to the house myself. I didn't tell him I was coming. I wanted to surprise him, to see his face light up when he saw me. Maybe I could bring the crew coffee and donuts, be the supportive wife, remind him that we were a team. I pulled up to our street, and my stomach tightened. The house looked different, more fortress than home. The yard was surrounded by a high chain-link fence I'd never seen before, with a large "No trespassing" sign on the gate. Mark had never mentioned a fence. I parked and walked to the gate, my heart pounding a nervous rhythm against my ribs. I could see the crew working inside, but I didn't see Mark's truck. The foreman, a man named Carlos who had worked for my father for 20 years, saw me and came over. His face was unreadable. "Sarah," he said, his voice low. He didn't open the gate. What are you doing here? I just wanted to see how things were going, I said, trying to sound casual. Maybe bring the guys some coffee. Carlos looked uncomfortable. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other, his eyes darting back toward the house. Mark's not here right now. And he gave us strict orders. No one on site who isn't on the crew. Insurance liability, he said. Insurance liability. It was a plausible excuse, the kind of corporate speak Mark was so good at. But this was Carlos. A man who had bounced me on his knee at company picnics when I was a child. He wouldn't lock me out of my own house over an insurance technicality unless he had been given a very direct, very serious order. Carlos, it's me, I said, my voice softening. It's my house. Just let me take a quick peek. 5 minutes. He shook his head, and for the first time, I saw pity in his eyes. It was a look that terrified me. I can't, Sarah. My orders come from Mark. He's the project lead. I'm sorry. He turned and walked away before I could argue, leaving me standing outside the fence like a stranger. I looked past him at the house. Our house. Men I had known for years. Men who worked for my company, moved about inside, their faces averted, as if they were ashamed to look at me. I was the owner, the boss, the woman who signed their paychecks, and I was being denied entry to my own property on the orders of my husband. Humiliation washed over me, hot and sickening. I got back in my car, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. Something was wrong, terribly, deeply wrong. And as I drove back to my sterile, silent prison in the sky, a cold, hard knot of fear began to form in the pit of my stomach. Mark wasn't just managing a project. He was hiding something. The knot of fear tightened with each passing day. The distance from Mark became a gaping chasm. Our phone calls, when they happened at all, were strained and hollow. He'd talk about supplier delays and inspection schedules, a litany of excuses for why the project was taking longer than expected. The initial few weeks had stretched into a month, then 6 weeks. When I'd ask for a firm timeline, he'd get defensive. These things are complicated, Sarah. You know that. It'll be done when it's done. My friend Clara was the one who lit the fuse. She called me one Tuesday night, her voice hesitant. Hey, I don't want to be a drama starter, she began, the classic preamble to dropping a bomb, but I was at that new Italian place downtown, Illinois Corvo, and I think I saw Mark. My heart seized. Oh, was he meeting with a client? I asked, already knowing the answer. A pause. He was with a woman, Clara said gently. A tall blonde. They worked cozy, laughing, holding hands across the table. Sarah, I'm so sorry, but it didn't look like a business meeting. I felt the blood drain from my face. The room started to spin. A tall blonde, I repeated, my voice a hoarse whisper. Are you sure it was him? Positive. He was wearing that blue sweater I always say makes his eyes pop. I almost went over to say hi, but the vibe was, I didn't want to intrude. The blue sweater. I had bought him that for his birthday. The image of him, wearing my gift, holding hands with another woman in a romantic restaurant, shattered something deep inside me. I thanked Clara, my voice robotic, and hung up the phone. I immediately called Mark. It went straight to voicemail. Hey, it's me. Just calling to say hi. Hope you're having a good night. I couldn't let on that I knew. I needed to hear his lie. He called me back an hour later. He sounded tired. Hey, sorry I missed your call. It was a long day. I just got home, about to fall into bed. Home? I asked, keeping my voice steady. To the house. No. Too dusty. I'm crashing on my brother's couch for a couple of nights. The fumes from the floor sealant are brutal, another lie. A quick, plausible one. He was a master of them. Oh, okay, I said. How was your day? Brutal, he repeated. Just meetings with subcontractors all day. Grabbed a burger by myself and came back to my brother's. I'm exhausted. By myself. The words echoed in the silent apartment. He said them so easily, so casually. The lie was as natural to him as breathing. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching the city lights blur through my tears. The woman's face, a featureless blonde silhouette, was burned into my mind. Who was she? How long had this been going on? Was this why he wanted me out of the house? So he could play house with her? The questions were a swarm of angry bees in my head. The next day, I became a detective in the ruins of my own marriage. I logged into our shared credit card account, my hands trembling as I typed the password. The statement was a roadmap of his betrayal. Dinner for two at Il Corvo on Tuesday night. A charge from a high-end lingerie store from the week before. A weekend getaway to a boutique hotel in wine country a month ago. The same weekend, he told me he had to stay on site to supervise a concrete pour. It was all there, a neat, itemized list of my destruction. Each charge was a stab to the heart. He was funding his affair with our money. With my money. The money from the company my father had built. The rage began to bubble up, hot and potent, burning away the shock and grief. The sadness was still there, a deep, aching wound, but the anger was a shield. It made me feel strong. It made me feel focused. I needed proof. I needed to see it with my own eyes. I couldn't confront him based on a credit card statement and a friend's sighting. He would just lie. He would twist it, turn it around, and make me feel like the crazy, paranoid wife. I had to be smarter than that. That night, I waited until after midnight. I got in my car and drove, not to the house, but to his brother's apartment complex. I parked across the street, in the shadows, my heart thumping a frantic rhythm. I watched the windows of his brother's apartment. It was dark. His truck wasn't in the parking lot. Another lie confirmed. He wasn't there. A gut feeling, a cold, terrible certainty, pulled me toward the one place I didn't want to go. I drove to our house. I parked a block away and walked, sticking to the shadows like a thief. The chain-link fence was still there, but the gate was slightly ajar. His truck was parked in the driveway, and next to it was a sleek, white convertible I'd never seen before. The house was dark, except for one window. The window of what was supposed to be our master bedroom. A soft, warm light spilled out onto the torn-up lawn. I crept closer, my breath catching in my throat. I could see their silhouettes moving behind the thin, temporary curtains. A man and a woman. I saw him reach out and tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. I saw her lean her head on his shoulder. Then he leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't a quick peck. It was a long, slow, lingering kiss. The kind of kiss he used to give me. A sound escaped my lips, a strangled, wounded noise. I clapped a hand over my mouth, stumbling backward into the darkness. The world tilted on its axis. The air was knocked from my lungs. It was real. All of it. The lies, the distance, the other woman. He wasn't just cheating on me. He was living with her. In my house. In our house. In the sanctuary he was supposedly building for us. He hadn't just kicked me out. He had replaced me. I somehow made it back to my car, my body moving on pure, unthinking instinct. I drove back to the apartment in a daze, the city lights smearing into streaks of neon pain. I collapsed on the floor inside the door, the cheap corporate carpet rough against my cheek. The dam of my composure broke, and I sobbed. I wept for my marriage, for the man I thought I knew, for the future that had been stolen from me. I cried until I had nothing left, until I was just a hollow, empty shell. And then, in that hollow, empty place, something new began to grow. It was cold and hard and sharp. It was rage, yes, but it was more than that. It was a clarity so absolute it felt like a religious experience. The tears stopped. I sat up, my back against the cold wall. My mind, which had been a chaotic storm of grief and confusion, was suddenly still. I thought about the house. I thought about the deed, tucked away in a safe deposit box, with my name, Sarah Miller, written in crisp, clear letters. Sole owner. I thought about the company, Miller and Daughter Renovations. My company. The checks he was cashing, the crew he was ordering around, the business he was using to fund his affair. It was all mine. He was the project manager. I was the CEO. He had made me a guest in my own life, but he had forgotten one crucial detail. I owned the house, and I owned the company that was tearing it apart. A slow, cold smile spread across my face. It felt alien and unfamiliar. He thought he was in control. He thought he was the king of his new castle, with his new queen. He thought he was building his new life on the foundation of my dreams. He had made a fatal miscalculation. He hadn't just betrayed a wife. He had betrayed his boss. And the project he was managing was about to go through some significant unannounced changes. The grand reveal he was planning was still going to happen. But it was going to be my reveal, not his. And it was going to be a surprise he would never forget. The days that followed were a strange duality. On the outside, I played the part of the patient, slightly needy wife. I'd leave him voicemails, my tone laced with a carefully constructed loneliness. Hey, just checking in. Getting really lonely in this apartment. Any idea when I can come home? I'd text him old photos of us, smiling and happy. Remember this day? I'd write a little knife twist of nostalgia. I needed him to believe I was weak, heartbroken, and completely oblivious. I needed him to stay comfortable in his arrogance. Inside, I was a general planning a war. The grief was still there, a constant, dull ache beneath the surface, but I compartmentalized it. I packed it away in a box and put it on a high shelf in my mind. There would be time for mourning later. Now was the time for strategy. The first step was to regain control of my company. Mark had been the face of it for so long that even my own employees saw him as the boss. I started by going through the books, line by line, for the past year. I worked from the sterile glass desk in the apartment, fueled by coffee and a cold, simmering rage. I found what I knew I would find: inflated invoices from shell companies that traced back to accounts he controlled. Consulting fees paid to names I didn't recognize. He wasn't just cheating on me, he was stealing from me. Systematically bleeding my father's legacy dry to fund his double life. The betrayal was deeper, uglier than I could have imagined. Each fraudulent entry was another shovel of dirt on the grave of the man I thought I loved. My second call was to my lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Evelyn who had handled my father's estate. I laid it all out for her in her quiet, book-lined office. The affair, the house, the company, the embezzlement. I expected shock, maybe some pity. Instead, she just nodded slowly, her expression grim but resolute. "Good," she said when I finished. "You're not crying. You're organized. This is good." She laid out my options, the legal pathways for divorce, for pressing charges for the fraud, for reclaiming my home. Her calm, clinical approach was exactly what I needed. It validated the cold, hard part of me that was now in control. My third and most important call was to Carlos, the foreman, the man who had been my father's right hand for 2 decades. I asked him to meet me at a diner far from the house, a place where we wouldn't be seen. He showed up looking wary, his shoulders slumped. He sat across from me in the vinyl booth and wouldn't meet my eye. "Carlos," I began, my voice quiet but firm. "I know what's going on." He flinched. "Sarah, It's okay." I cut him off. "You were following the orders of the project manager. I get it, but I need to know whose side you're on. Are you loyal to the man who is currently running my company into the ground? Or are you loyal to the man who built it? Are you loyal to my father?" He finally looked at me, and I saw the conflict in his eyes. The shame. "Your father was the best man I ever knew," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "It's been difficult. Mark's changed. He's arrogant. He treats the men like dirt. It's not the company Frank Miller built." "Then help me take it back," I said. "Help me finish this project. My way." I slid a folder across the table. It contained the original architectural plans for the house, the ones Mark and I had dreamed up together. The bay windows, the open concept kitchen, the master suite with the soaking tub. Then I slid another folder next to it. This one contained a new set of plans. Plans I had drawn up myself over the last sleepless 48 hours. He opened the new folder. He stared at the pages, his brow furrowed in confusion. "I don't understand," he said, looking up at me. This is all wrong. Industrial kitchen? Dividing the master bedroom into 2 tiny offices? Plywood subflooring instead of oak? Sarah, this will destroy the value of the house. I'm aware, I said, my voice as cold and steady as a surgeon's scalpel. Mark has been approving all the change orders and material invoices without even reading them. He just signs whatever is put in front of him.
He's too busy, you see.
From now on, you'll be taking your orders directly from me. We're going to follow these new plans to the letter. And you and the crew will tell him that everything is proceeding exactly as he expects. You will blame any aesthetic discrepancies on supply chain issues. You will tell him the high-end finishes are being saved for the very last minute to avoid damage. You will lie to him, Carlos. You will lie to him every single day. He looked from the plans to my face, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of fear in his eyes. He wasn't just looking at his boss's daughter anymore. He was looking at a woman he didn't recognize. A woman who was capable of a kind of cold, calculated devastation that was both terrifying and, I think, deeply impressive to him.
He saw the Miller steel in my spine.
He closed the folder and pushed it back toward me. Frank would be proud of you, he said, a slow smile spreading across his face. He always said you had a spine like rebar. Okay, Sarah. Let's get to work. The next few weeks were the hardest of my life. I was living a lie, and the effort was draining. I had to listen to Mark on the phone, complaining about trivial work details, all while knowing he was calling from the bed he was sharing with another woman in my house. I had to feign excitement when he'd say things like, "You're going to love the new countertops, honey. They're finally going in next week," knowing full well that Carlos was, at that very moment, installing cold, institutional-grade stainless steel. There were moments of weakness, dark nights where the rage would subside, leaving only the gaping wound of grief. I'd look at old photographs, at the smiling, happy man I had married, and I would break down. The plan felt monstrous, cruel. Part of me, a small, stupid, hopeful part, just wanted my husband back. I almost picked up the phone a dozen times to scream at him, to confront him, to demand an explanation, to beg him to tell me it was all a horrible mistake. The thing that kept me going, the thing that solidified my resolve into something unbreakable, was a single, offhand comment he made during one of our calls. He was talking about the future, about the parties we would throw in the new house. "I was talking to Chloe today," he said casually. My blood ran cold.
Chloe.
The other woman had a name. "Who's Chloe?" I asked, my voice a carefully controlled whisper. "Oh, she's the new junior designer at the firm I used to work at. I've been having her consult on some of the color palettes. She has a great eye. Anyway, she thinks we should go with a minimalist aesthetic for the living room. All whites and grays. Very chic." He was not only living with her in my house, he was giving her a say in its design. He was replacing my taste, my vision, my very presence, piece by piece. He was erasing me, and he was doing it with such casual, dismissive cruelty. He didn't even have the decency to hide her name from me. He was flaunting her, rubbing my face in my own replacement. That was it. That was the moment the last flicker of love and hope died. The small, stupid, hopeful part of me went silent. The cold, hard part took complete and total control. There was no going back. He wasn't just going to lose the house. He was going to be humiliated within it. He was going to watch his new life, built on a foundation of lies, crumble to dust before his very eyes. And I was going to be the one holding the demolition hammer. The text message arrived on a Friday morning. 3 words that made my heart hammer against my ribs. "It's finally done." My fingers trembled as I typed a reply. "OMG. Really? Can I come see it?" "Tomorrow," he wrote back. "I want to get it perfect for you. The grand reveal. I'll see you at noon. Prepare to be amazed." I knew what that meant. He needed 24 hours to scrub Chloe's presence from the house, to hide her clothes, her toothbrush, her existence. He was going to play the part of the devoted husband, presenting his masterpiece to his loving wife. The audacity of it was breathtaking. I didn't go at noon on Saturday. I let him wait. I let him pace around the house, checking his watch, wondering where I was. I let his calls go to voicemail. I wanted him to feel a flicker of the uncertainty and anxiety I had been living with for months. I arrived at 3 o'clock. But I didn't come alone. My lawyer, Evelyn, was in the passenger seat of my car. Behind us, in a separate vehicle, was Carlos and two of the largest, most intimidating members of his crew. This wasn't a homecoming. It was an eviction. I walked up the new stone pathway, my heels clicking with a purpose I had never felt before. The old, peeling front door had been replaced with a heavy, custom-made oak door. It was beautiful. I felt a pang of sadness for the house itself. It was the innocent victim in all of this. Before I could even knock, the door swung open. Mark stood there, a brilliant, beaming smile on his face. He was wearing the blue sweater. He looked handsome, happy, and utterly fraudulent. "There you are," he boomed, spreading his arms wide. I was getting worried. "Welcome home, my love." He leaned in to kiss me, but I turned my head slightly, so his lips landed on my cheek. He barely noticed. He was too caught up in his own performance. His eyes scanned past me, noticing Evelyn and the others for the first time. His smile faltered for a fraction of a second. "Who are they?" he asked, his voice a little tighter. "Just some people from the office," I said smoothly. "They wanted to see the final product. You know, for the company portfolio." I brushed past him and stepped inside. And then I saw her.
Chloe.
The tall blonde. She was standing in the middle of the foyer, a proprietary smile on her perfectly made-up face. She was wearing a white linen dress, looking every bit the lady of the manor. She looked me up and down, a flicker of something, pity, contempt, in her eyes. She thought I was the frumpy, clueless wife about to be discarded. "You must be Sarah," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. She extended a hand.
I'm Chloe. I've heard so much about you.
I ignored her hand. "I'm sure you have," I said, my voice flat and cold. Mark, sensing the tension, jumped in. "Chloe has been an absolute lifesaver," he gushed. "An indispensable design consultant. I couldn't have done it without her." He put his arm around her shoulders, a casual, familiar gesture that made my stomach churn. "All right, enough standing around. Let the grand tour begin. Prepare to have your mind blown, Sarah." He led us toward the kitchen, his voice echoing in the cavernous, open-plan space. "We took down all these walls just like we planned. It's a space built for entertaining. And wait until you see the countertops." He rounded the corner into the kitchen and stopped dead. His smile vanished. His face went slack with confusion. The vast, open space was dominated by a massive, institutional-grade stainless steel island. The countertops were the same cold, brushed metal. The cabinets, which were supposed to be a warm, custom-milled walnut, were stark white, high-gloss laminate with no handles. It looked like a morgue or a commercial kitchen in a prison. "Well, what is this?" he stammered, running a hand over the steel counter as if he couldn't believe it was real. "This isn't the marble we ordered. Carlos told me it was on back order. He said they were putting in a temporary counter." "Supply chain issues," I said, my voice echoing his own excuses back at him. "It's brutal out there." He shot me a look, a mixture of annoyance and confusion. "Well, okay. We'll get it fixed. The rest of the house is perfect. Come see the master suite." He led the way up the newly finished staircase, his confidence returning with each step. "We expanded the footprint just like you wanted. Created a true sanctuary. A spa bathroom, a walk-in closet the size of a bedroom." He threw open the double doors to the master bedroom. And froze again. The vast space he was describing was gone. In its place were two small, cramped, identical rooms, separated by a newly built wall. Each room had a single window and just enough space for a small desk and a chair. The plush carpeting had been replaced with cheap, industrial-grade linoleum, the kind you'd find in a school hallway. Mark stared, his mouth hanging open. "No," he whispered.
No, no, no.
"This is wrong. This is all wrong. There was a wall here, we took it down. I saw them take it down." "There was a structural issue," Carlos said, stepping forward, his voice perfectly grave. "Had to put it back up for support." It's in the revised plans. What revised plans? Mark yelled, whirling on him. I never approved any revised plans. You did, I said quietly. I nodded to Evelyn, who stepped forward and handed him a sheaf of papers. You signed off on every single change order. The steel counters, the new wall, the linoleum flooring, the budget-grade light fixtures. You signed for all of it. He snatched the papers, his hands shaking as he flipped through them. He saw his own signature, scrawled at the bottom of page after page. He had been so arrogant, so sure of his control, that he hadn't even bothered to read what he was signing. He had just seen the Miller and daughter letterhead and assumed it was business as usual. I don't understand, he said, his voice cracking. He looked from the papers to me, and for the first time, he seemed to truly see the expression on my face. The cold, calm fury. And the dawning horror began to creep into his eyes. Chloe, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. Mark, what is going on? She demanded, her voice shrill. This isn't the house you promised me. This is hideous. Promised you? I asked, turning my full attention to her. I let out a small, humorless laugh. He promised you? That's adorable. Did he also promise you that he owned it? I nodded to Evelyn again. She produced a second document, the deed to the house. She unfolded it and held it up for them both to see. As you can see, Evelyn said, her voice clear and cutting, the sole legal owner of this property is Sarah Miller. It was purchased by her prior to the marriage and is therefore not a marital asset subject to division. Mark is, legally speaking, a guest in her home. As are you. The color drained from Mark's face. He looked like he had been punched in the gut. Chloe stared at the deed, then at Mark, her eyes wide with disbelief and fury. You don't own this house? She shrieked at him. You told me it was yours. You told me we were building our future here. It is mine. It's ours, he sputtered, turning to me, his eyes wild with desperation. Sarah, tell them. This is a joke, right? A crazy, horrible joke? Tell me you didn't do this. I did this, I said, my voice low and steady, each word a perfectly placed stone. You wanted to gut our house to build a new life, and you did. Just not the one you were expecting. You kicked me out of my home so you could move your mistress in. You stole from my father's company to pay for your cheap affair. You tried to erase me, but you forgot who I am. I'm not just your wife, Mark. I am your boss, and you're fired. I turned to Carlos. Carlos, would you and your men please escort these trespassers from my property? They can collect their personal belongings from the front lawn later this evening. That's when the screaming started. It was Mark first, a raw, animal sound of pure, impotent rage. He lunged toward me, but Carlos and the other man stepped in front of him, two mountains of muscle. He was yelling, cursing, calling me names I won't repeat. He was a cornered animal, all fangs and fury, now that his comfortable world had been ripped away. But it was Chloe's reaction that was truly satisfying. Her anger wasn't directed at me. It was all for him. You lied to me, she screamed, her face contorted in an ugly mask of rage. You have nothing. You're nothing. I left my husband for you. You pathetic, broke loser. She slapped him, hard, across the face. The sound echoed in the half-finished, architecturally ruined house. And then she stormed out, slamming the beautiful new oak door behind her. Mark just stood there, his cheek red, his world completely shattered. The fight went out of him. He just deflated, his shoulders slumping in defeat. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. Sarah, please, he whispered. I just looked back at him, my face a mask of stone. I felt nothing. No pity, no love, no lingering affection. Just a vast, cold emptiness where my heart used to be. Get out of my house, I said. Carlos and his men each took one of Mark's arms and gently, but firmly, walked him out the door. I stood alone in the foyer of my ruined, reclaimed home. The silence that descended was the loudest thing I had ever heard.
It was the sound of the end.
And the beginning. After they were gone, I walked through the house. It was a monument to my heartbreak, a physical manifestation of my rage. The cold steel kitchen, the divided bedroom, the cheap, ugly floors. Every wrong detail was a deliberate, calculated strike. It wasn't just revenge. It was a reclamation. I had taken the dream he had corrupted and twisted it into a nightmare for him. I had made it a place he could never have imagined, a place he could never want. I had made it so completely mine in its ugliness that he could never again picture his future within its walls. The silence was profound. The house felt like it was holding its breath, waiting to see what I would do next. I stood in the middle of the living room, surrounded by exposed wires and unpainted drywall, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. The weight that had been crushing my chest was gone. The legal battle was short and brutal. Evelyn was a shark. The evidence of Mark's embezzlement was irrefutable. Faced with the choice between a quiet divorce, where he walked away with nothing but his clothes, and facing felony fraud charges, he chose to disappear. He signed the papers without a fight. I never saw him again. I heard through the grapevine that Chloe did, in fact, go back to her husband, and that Mark had moved to another state to escape the mess he had made. He was a ghost, a bad memory. For a long time, I just left the house as it was. A weird, broken testament to a weird, broken time in my life. I'd camp out in one of the spare rooms, eating takeout on the floor. I needed to live in the wreckage for a while. I needed to understand what I had survived. Slowly, very slowly, I started to heal. I took back the reins of my company, not as the silent partner in the back office, but as the visible, confident leader my father had always known I could be. I met with every client. I walked every job site. I earned the respect of my crew not as Frank Miller's daughter, but as Sarah Miller, their boss. The company thrived. About a year after Mark left, I called Carlos into my office. I unrolled a new set of blueprints on the table. They were for my house. My real house. "I'm ready," I said. This time, the renovation was different. It wasn't about building a dream for two people. It was about building a sanctuary for one. I kept some of the changes. The wall in the master bedroom came down, but I didn't make it one large room. I turned one half into a beautiful bedroom, and the other half into a library, filled with all the books I had never had time to read. The kitchen was completely redone, with warm wood and soapstone counters, and a huge central island where I could cook for my friends. I filled the house with light and color, with art that I loved, with music. I filled it with my own life. The work was slow, methodical. I was there every day, not just as the owner, but as a part of the team. I learned how to tile a backsplash. I helped hang drywall. I sanded the beautiful new oak floors myself, feeling the grain of the wood under my hands, bringing out its warmth and beauty. I was literally, physically, rebuilding my own life from the studs up. It's not a perfect happy ending. There are scars. There are nights when I wake up from a dream of him, of the life I thought we had, and the ghost of that old pain is still there. Betrayal leaves a mark on your soul that never truly fades. But it's no longer a gaping wound. It's a reminder of my own strength. He tried to tear me down, but he only revealed a foundation that was stronger than he, or even I, ever knew. Now, I sit in my beautiful bay window in my library in my house. The sun streams in, warming my face. The room smells of old books and lemon polish. It is quiet. It is peaceful. It is mine. Every inch of it. I survived. I rebuilt. I am home. It took tearing my life down to the studs to see what it was really made of. If this story hit close to home, I'd love to hear your version. Thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these stories to life.